So hey anime fans. The series name is What If Naruto Got Harem with Android 21. So let's start the series. The 23rd Tenkaichi Budokai, the greatest of all martial arts competitions, was set to begin on a proud and wonderful evening for the people of Earth. Anyone might display their strength there and hope to become the next world champion. Sun Monkey King, an 18-year-old male with a strong physique, was most thrilled about this chance. He was certain that he would win and was prepared to compete in the event for the third time. The following day he would have to face a strange girl who was obsessed with him for no apparent reason, but then he would be able to show off his skills against Ma Jr., or Piccolo Jr., the son of the notorious Demon King Piccolo. He shared a room with his best buddy and fellow student of Master Roshi, and while the black-eyed visual artist calmly looked up at the night sky, his enormous black spikes fluttered happily in the breeze. I think I know her, the Monkey King thought, tilting his head in confusion. In the meantime, the bald monk Krillin was sleeping soundly, grinning broadly, and drooling a little. He snorted gently as he curled up like a mummy in his blankets, encased in what felt like a warm, fluffy silk hug. The Monkey King sighed and put his chin in his hand before turning back to the night sky and laughing softly at his friend. Following the enigmatic figure, the Monkey King sprang out of the window without hesitation and landed cleanly. The young woman was wandering around the closed arena, standing among the empty seats to take in the magnificent building, and trying to close her eyes and see the game the following day. A black young woman with spiky hair soon saw her. The Monkey King moved slowly toward the young red-haired woman and murmured, "Pardon me, miss. I'm sorry for disturbing you, but it seems like we've met before." The enigmatic woman said, slowly turning and brushing a stray red lock out of her face. "Monkey King, is it you, really?" As he began to look about, the Monkey King looked excited and said, "Hey Suno, if you're here, does that mean Ader is here too?" The Monkey King exclaimed, "Suno." But he was still having trouble believing she was the same woman he had met years earlier in Jingle Village. As she and the Monkey King left the arena to take a walk through the nearby city, Suno said, "Sorry, Afenkinig, Nerich Bines." He would have loved to attend, but he had to stay at home. The red-haired girl suddenly got the courage to tell the boy she had harbored affections for since she was a young girl. "I'm so happy I met you, Monkey King. I knew you would be present as soon as I learned about the competition." The Monkey King said, "You came looking for me, Suno." With a tilt of his head and a smile that made the poor girl's cheeks flush a little. She was now seeing how much more attractive her object of want had become. Suno struggled to articulate her sentiments and answered, "I did, I just didn't think it would be so hard to say." With a hint of embarrassment. "Come with me," the Monkey King yelled abruptly as he grabbed Suno's hand and escorted her out of the bustling metropolis. "Why, please Monkey King, where are we going? What about the competition?" With a relaxed smile, the Monkey King said to Suno, "I think you'll really like my favorite place in the entire world. It helps me when I need to think, and we'll make it back in time." He had a dependable yellow cloud in mind, so he called out for it by putting a cupped hand to his mouth and shouting, "Nimbus." Swoosh. The first to leap atop his enchanted yellow cloud was Monkey King, but he was saved from falling through by his unadulterated heart. The boy warrior held out his hand for Suno to take. The massive yellow cloud came down from the sky, stopped, and hovered right in front of the two, waiting for them to jump on it, and directed to its destination. Despite her nervousness, Suno grasped the Monkey King's hand without hesitation, and gave a little yelp as the powerful warrior effortlessly dragged her onto Nimbus. She chuckled and sat down with the Monkey King, gasping as the cloud gradually raised them before heading out in the direction he had requested. The Monkey King grinned as he saw Suno's lovely hair blowing in the wind and the fluffy white clouds in the distance, pleased to see his longtime buddy having fun. The opportunity to touch the ball of dampness was too good to pass up. In a short period of time, the Monkey King was able to locate his house and, more significantly, the grave of his grandfather, Gohan, whom he loved. The young fighter clasped his hands together, smiled seriously, and bowed. Suno followed her friend's example and bowed before the Monkey King's grandfather. The Monkey King sighed and hummed to himself before leading the red-haired teen to a picturesque clearing, where they constructed a fire using local branches and a basic high blast to stay warm. Suno paused to speak after basking in the warmth of the fire, saying, "We haven't seen each other in ages, but I know you, Monkey King. You've likely been caught up in all kinds of adventures." "That's true," The Monkey King nodded and laughed as he scratched his black, spiky hair. "The past couple of years have been especially wild. I spent a lot of time training with Kami." Suno tilted her head and asked, Kami?" as she tried to visualize what this Kami would look like. "He's got this enormous lookout in the heavens, and because of him, I'm much stronger than I used to be. I know I can defeat Demon King Piccolo without any trouble now," the Monkey King retorted, partially to himself. "You've truly developed," the red-haired girl praised the warrior with shining eyes, and Suno gazed at her companion in awe, still finding it hard to believe that this was the same tiny child with the monkey tail. "What have you been doing?" "Danky. Unwise Spaderos, Suno." "Although nothing is as exciting as you," Suno informed the Monkey King, "Jingle Village has never been better, thanks to Ader's assistance and the Red Ribbon Army's withdrawal. Now it's so much larger. As she said this final section, her enthusiasm grew since she was always feeling good about her home's growth and the inhabitants' cooperation. With a smile, the Monkey King exclaimed, "I'm very happy. I'm glad to see Suno's enthusiasm and will have to stop by and see everyone later." Suno grinned and said, "I would love that," before returning her attention to the fire. The unfortunate girl, flushed a little, yelled, "Monkey King," to the young martial artist beside her. "Yeah, Suno?" Monkey King asked the red-haired teenager, turning his head to question if the fire was too hot and why Suno's face was so red. As she continued, the Monkey King's whole attention was on Suno. "There's a significant reason I came to see you tonight. Since the day I found you and rescued you from the cold, I felt a certain way that I couldn't describe at the time," she said, looking lovely in the glow of the raging fire and the clear night sky. She remarked, "I suppose I was too young to comprehend it, but now I do." When the stunning girl with the crimson hair kissed him, he gave in to impulse, since he couldn't explain why Suno had such an effect on him. "Suno." The Afenkinig revealed their name as he approached. When a Sultsam's feeling overcame him, his heart began to race. His face seemed to be on fire, and his heart was thumping like a drum. His first inclination was to reach out and grab Suno before they briefly separated due to the pressing need for air. As Suno caressed the Monkey King's cheek and gazed at him with intense desire, she said, "I've loved you since I was a little girl, and now that we're together again, even if it's just for tonight, I want to show you how I feel. Let me demonstrate how much you truly mean to me." Unfortunately, their love would only survive for that one night, but the two were unaware that their passionate act would have long-lasting effects. Sun Monkey King would return the next day at the International Martial Arts Tournament, right in the middle of saying goodbye to Suno, and dropping the red-haired woman off at her home in Jingle Village. His opponent, the enigmatic woman who had been observing him the day before, was not amused by his rudeness, and made it clear as soon as their match began. He would arrive barely in time and almost lose because of his tardiness. The black-haired woman appeared to harbor a deep-seated resentment toward the Monkey King. Despite her valiant efforts and full strength, she was unable to defeat the powerful Sun Monkey King. The Monkey King easily knocked his opponent out of the ring, and she was unable to match with him. When the lowly warrior went to congratulate his fellow warrior, he found that this enigmatic woman was still alive. It was the Demon Ox King's daughter and princess, Chichi, whom he had met years earlier. This startling discovery was immediately followed by the young Monkey King's vow, which he didn't fully understand but was nevertheless willing to keep. To wed Chichi when they were reunited. The newly engaged couple's celebration would have to wait since Monkey King and Piccolo Jr. were about to engage in a titanic fight that would decide the fate of planet Earth. Sun Monkey King proved that his power and resolve were unbeatable, even if Piccolo had grown enormous in his attempts to vanquish his greatest enemy. The arena had crumbled into dust after their collision. The Monkey King was now free to rest with his new wife and start a new chapter in his exciting trip after the strong martial artist defeated him, saving the Earth once more. But the young Monkey King isn't the subject of this tale. Rather, it's about his offspring, about whom he knows nothing. An older Suno with a bright yellow beanie on her head was welcoming the other villagers with a giant man who was carrying big slabs of wood. The man who most closely resembled the well-known Frankenstein's monster was the android Ader, who was close friends with both Suno and Monkey King. Snow crunched beneath heavy boots, and a sigh escaped from slightly parted lips, as a gloved hand reached up to push aside a familiar lock of red hair. While using her snow shovel to clear a root, the single mother paused to wipe her forehead and push the shovel down. She turned to face the ecstatic android and said, "Ader, you haven't come across Naruto, have you?" "I think he went hunting again," Ader said, pausing to consider the circumstances while moving the wood he was carrying. "That boy is just like his father," Suno said simply, looking up at the sky and shaking her head with a loving smile and laughter. In conjunction with Naruto. Far away from the icy region of Jingle Village, where verdant vegetation ruled the vast landscape, a young kid was sitting atop a tree, his golden monkey tail flowing in the wind. As he prepared to leap on his gullible victim, he narrowed his blue eyes. It appeared to be an odd combination of his father's and his uncle's hair, the late Fouth headmaster, who had passed away years before Naruto was born, as a hand reached up to scratch at his blonde hair spikes. Large animals' massive footfalls caused the landscape to tremor, forcing many smaller animals to run away or hide in small protected areas. However, what did the Monkey King's children do? Since his destination was close by, the young man had thrown away his cold clothing because it was superfluous. Naturally, he charged directly toward the threat. Vados walked over to the surprised dinosaur, grinning broadly. It tried to swallow the monkey-tailed boy whole with its enormous, blade-like jaws, but Naruto showed strange, unnatural agility and quickness for a child of his age. The young fighter had the chance to leap high and land a powerful blow on the dinosaur's neck, quickly killing it, while the enormous creature snapped at the air to avoid its powerful teeth. The massive reptile dropped to the grass-covered ground below, and Naruto grinned as he reached out and effortlessly raised the giant beast above himself with one hand. "Mama and the villagers, I hope they're pleased with my catch. Just thinking of all this meat cooked up makes me hungry." Naruto muttered to himself as he began to disobey gravity's laws by floating stably, and then even flying through the air. Those on the colder side of the continent knew that the monkey-tailed youngster was not an airplane or jet, but anyone who caught a sight of him racing by a few clouds assumed he was and went about their day. Naruto tripled his speed in anticipation of his next meal, and a crowd gathered in Jingle Village to greet him and celebrate his biggest catch of the day. Naruto's whiskered cheeks, now red with cold, erupted into a wide smile when he saw Suno approaching with Ader. The local villagers jumped as the young guy shrugged the dinosaur's carcass off his shoulder. He ran to his mother and sprang into her arms, giving her a big hug, while his tail briefly coiled around her waist. "I got another big one for us," he said after he had leaped down and led Suno by the hand to where he had made another catch. Suno grinned and remarked, "Good job, kiddo. This will keep everyone fed for months," as he rubbed Naruto's blonde, spiky hair and put a gloved hand on his head. Naruto followed Ader and told the enormous android about his voyage, as the two began to drag the dinosaur in the direction of the butchers. He said with pride, slapping his Bardigan wage. He looked so much like his father, Suno thought as she gave him another loving glance inside. A new day had dawned, the sky was clear, the sun was shining, and most of the people in Jingle Village were cheerful, though not all of them. In contrast, young Naruto was sitting on top of a mountain with his eyes closed and his arms folded. He appeared focused, looking for something, but he didn't know what it was. No, when the 5-year-old opened his eyes and looked up at the sky, he was puzzled. Sitting on the mountaintop, the monkey-tailed child tried to figure out how to detect the kai he sensed and pinpoint its precise place so he could look into the disturbance. Naruto didn't say good morning to his mother or remain for breakfast because he was so focused on his objective. He knows that he felt something, a force that might be the most powerful to have ever set foot on this earth, but it was also very curious. It was obvious that a war had taken place from the massive craters and burns that covered the ground, but the real evidence was a man with long, spiky hair and a large wound in his chest. Then, putting aside his ridiculous eagerness for the fight, Naruto felt it. There was a tremendous snow multiple increase in his kai. Focusing on the strength, he blasted from his position like a rocket without hurrying, breaching the sound barrier in seconds, but it seemed he was too late. Naruto stopped and regained his breath when he got closer to the long-haired man and saw the brown monkey tail coiled around his waist. He knelt before the visitor, who was thought to be dead. He reached out, paused when he felt his kai, and said, "He's alive." Naruto almost leaped back and stood next to the stranger's face when he heard his feeble, fading voice. "Why, you're a superpower," he stammered, his one open eye widening as he looked at Naruto and then at his own golden monkey tail. Without hesitation or request, Naruto carefully lifted the dying guy and diverted his kai into his larger body, while keeping the two of them in the air. "Ein Superkraft. Is it a kind of food?" he asked, frowning and tilting his head, observing the enigmatic stranger's eye gradually shutting and his respiration becoming less noticeable. Naruto bit his lip as he looked around in a panic, unsure of how to behave. When Naruto felt another brief but abrupt burst of kai in that moment, he had no choice but to rush toward the source of the energy explosion, and ended up in a realm full of tall, powerful trees, with a large, solid house in the middle that appeared to be meant for nobility. Naruto landed as gently as he could, setting the bleeding stranger on the ground before turning around and exclaiming, "Hello, is there anyone here? I need help." The sight of an older girl with shoulder-length blonde hair pulled back in a high ponytail startled Naruto. Her chocolate eyes were the most appealing Naruto had ever seen. She looked first at Naruto and then at the unidentified individual who was unconscious on the ground. Then she turned around and hurried back inside, yelling, "Grandpa." The quiet older voice said, "What is it, fifth headmaster?" As it followed the girl outside and took a short breath in mild surprise at what it saw. "Oh, Naruto and the withering superpower were quickly approached by a man with dark eyes, tan skin, and long gray hair. "Bring him inside. It might not be too late to save his life," the man said, looking at the monkey-tailed man before addressing the youngster. Naruto entered the home of his new acquaintance, glanced at the girl fifth headmaster, and then followed the girl's grandfather into a room full with medical equipment. Naruto agreed with the instruction, placing the nearly lifeless super on the table before standing back and crossing his arms to watch the fifth headmaster swiftly make his way across the room and gather everything her grandfather needed without asking any questions. "Do you require my assistance, mister?" The first headmaster turned to his granddaughter and said, "Fifth headmaster, why don't you take the young man outside?" After extending a friendly assurance to Naruto that there's no need. "I'll take care of everything here. It might take some time." As she escorted the golden monkey-tailed boy out of her spacious home, the fifth headmaster softly persuaded him to follow her. Naruto took a moment to glance over his shoulder, and was more than willing to accompany the older girl to her favorite place to sit and think. A big tree full of big, luscious red apples. The fifth headmaster found a comfortable place to sit on some soft grass, while Naruto jumped into the tree and began eating as many apples as he could. He almost stunned fifth headmaster by offering the elder girl the other apple he was holding while dangling from his tail. The fifth headmaster raised one eyebrow, as if he were almost perplexed by the timidity of the monkey boy for offering her one of their apples, as if it were his own. But instead of responding angrily or offensively, fifth headmaster accepted the apple and bowed her gratitude when she bit into it. As he turned to face the home, Naruto remarked, "Do you think that man is gonna be okay?" and put aside an apple he had partially eaten. "I don't know." The fifth headmaster shrugged and added softly, "Most normal people don't live long with a gaping chest wound." Naruto murmured and resumed eating his apple, unsure of how to read such a remark. However, Gramps is the world's most formidable combatant and healer. The fifth headmaster attempted to console Naruto after observing how upset he appeared at a remark by saying, he's even better than the great mutant Rashi." Who is that? Does he have strength?" Naruto asked the elder woman, shaking his head and throwing away his apple core. As she described Rashi to Naruto, the fifth headmaster moaned and rolled her brown eyes at what she believed should be common knowledge. "Only one of the best martial artists of all time, second to my grandpa, of course." "Is this Rashi person still alive?" Rivals Naruto asked the fifth headmaster if there was a martial artist with such strength in the area. "I think so," the sixth headmaster shrugged. The fifth headmaster told the monkey-tailed child, "You might as well go home and return tomorrow. I doubt you'll see much change," after observing that Naruto seems pleased to simply sit there. "My grandfather sends him letters occasionally." The young fighter turned around and began sprinting toward the location that the girl with the blonde ponytail thought was his home after glancing back, waving goodbye, and exclaiming, "Nice to meet you, fifth headmaster." Naruto mumbled, mostly to himself but also audibly, "I hope he improves quickly." With a small smile and a shake of her head, the first headmaster's granddaughter whispered to herself, "Weird kid." Naruto was looking out his window when he noticed the dim outline of a crescent moon against the cold black sky. The little kid sighed and turned aside, focusing on his mother, who was approaching him carrying a plate of enough food for 5 grown men. "Here you go, sweetheart," Suno replied joyfully, setting a modest feast in front of the superpower kid, before taking a seat at the table herself. "Thanks, Mama." Naruto mumbled cautiously, looking distractedly at the plate, rather than delving into his meals. Suno asked anxiously, "Is everything okay, honey?" "You're not even touching your food," she said, recognizing the telltale symptoms of her toddler's distress. Leaning his arms against the table, Naruto shrugged, wondering who this Master Rashi was and what he had found the day before about the man. He remarked, "I guess I'm not that hungry." "Have you got hunger?" Suno hurried to her kid and stroked his forehead in concern. "Are you feeling okay? Do you have a fever?" she asked. Naruto shook his head gently and smiled as he took his mother's hand away. "That's not it at all, Mama. It's just... Are you familiar with anyone named Mutant Rashi?" he said. When his mother said, "I do, he's your father's teacher," with a smile and a nod, Naruto felt a great sense of comfort and happiness. "He trained my dad," said the golden monkey-tailed youngster, leaning forward with eagerness, his palms on the table, and his eyes wide. As she began to recall all she could about the ancient martial arts master, Suno nodded and put her chin on her hand. "I've heard he's a highly skilled martial artist, but also a dangerous pervert," she said. Despite his incomplete understanding of what a pervert was, Naruto muttered, "I see, still searching for Master Rashi. That look tells me you intend to search for him, am I right?" Suno groaned as she saw her son's joyous smile. You know me too well," Naruto cheekily said to his mother as he rubbed his spiky blonde hair. Furthermore, she sent Naruto to find the Monkey King's tutor out of self-interest. She hoped the ancient master would be able to link a father and his kid. Suno told her son, "If my recollection of your father's past words is accurate, I believe he resides near the Southeast Islands, not far from Lako Village." Naruto grinned eagerly and asked, "So, Lako Village?" He thought, "I suppose I'll begin looking there," and his hunger returned with a force as he made his way to his food stockpile. "Just be careful," Honey Suno cautioned as she got ready to eat her own modest dinner. Naruto waved his mother away with a laid-back smile, while brandishing a massive drumstick that appeared to be nearly the size of his arm. He remarked, "There's no need to worry, Mama. I'm the strongest after all." "I know you are, but I still can't help worrying about you, my little man," Suno sighed and shook her head. In order to allay his mother's fears, Naruto made a more solemn pledge that he would be safe. The next day, Naruto was racing through the air at seemingly unfathomable speeds, as she remembered what the fifth headmaster had said the day before about her grandfather matching the elderly turtle hermit. As he hurried through the skies and past innumerable flying creatures of all sizes, his familiar silver-white aura enveloped his entire diminutive form. Gently landing on the grass, the boy with the monkey tail began searching for the grandfather and granddaughter. He scowled in perplexity as he was unable to find their Kai anywhere, and decided that they wouldn't object if he walked inside to see how the man he had found the day before was doing. Using his senses, Naruto entered the Senju home and located the room where the long-haired stranger with spikes sticking out of his head was kept. The man was motionless but breathing. Blood-soaked bandages covered his chest. Whatever the first headmaster managed to do, it was successful. "I'm glad to see you're okay," Naruto said calmly, swishing his golden monkey tail from side to side as he addressed the unconscious superpower. Ka. Kakert. Naruto turned his head and listened, as the mysterious figure spoke a name while he slept. What are you doing here? Said the fifth headmaster, hands on her hips, eyes raised, resisting the need to snatch the monkey-tailed child by the rumple of his shirt and fling him out. Checking if he's still alive, Naruto said bluntly, glancing at the slightly irritated blonde. The fifth headmaster rolled her eyes and took her hands off her hips as she got close to the unconscious superpower. You are aware that entering someone's house when they are not present is considered rude, aren't you? She said. Naruto asked, is that so? With a smile that made it difficult for the fifth headmaster to determine if he was kidding. You're hopeless, said the fifth headmaster, shaking her head, although if you look closely, you could see a tiny smile. Naruto stated gravely as he gazed at the sleeping superpower's prone figure, I'm glad he's going to be okay. How do you go about finding out? As she glanced at the bandaged alien and then back at Naruto, the fifth headmaster raised an eyebrow and remarked, he still might not survive the night. Naruto nearly convinced the fifth headmaster to believe what her fellow blonde was saying, with her straightforward but earnest response. I just have a feeling, you know. The fifth headmaster asked, did you come just to check up on him? As she led Naruto out of the room. Naruto's smile became even more sheepish as he tinkled with his spiky hair. Well, I wanted to see your grandpa as well. Is he here? He asked. Naruto was led by the fifth headmaster to her grandfather, who was sitting quietly or rather, meditating beneath a tall, sturdy oak tree, with flowers blooming all around his serene frame. Yes, the elderly man is just having fun in his garden. According to her, Foldmere. Good to see you again, my friend with the monkey tail. The fifth headmaster chuckled quietly into her hand, and Naruto's ear twitched as he waved and said, Yo, how's it going, old-timer? In a non-offensive response to Naruto's welcome, the first headmaster said, I didn't think we'd be seeing you so soon. As Naruto shyly rubbed his neck, he candidly said, well, I wish I could say this was just a friendly visit. Well? Could you tell me where to find Master Roshi? The child asked, with a golden monkey tail, surprising the first and fifth headmasters. The old guy thought, man, why are you looking for my former rival? As he wiped his chin and hid his smile, if it's okay with you, may I ask? He said. With a somewhat dejected tone, Naruto said, I don't know exactly what I should expect. However, I would like to meet the man who trained my father. It might not matter, but I think that training with Master Roshi could help me get closer to my dad. He turned away from the first and fifth headmasters, looked up at the sky, and sighed as he tried to visualize his father. The fifth headmaster gazed at Naruto with surprise, not anticipating the always upbeat and intelligent boy to be so dejected. However, because of her own problems with her parents, she could somewhat identify with him. The first headmaster acknowledged that Naruto's wish to locate his old acquaintance was understandable, and gave a subtle nod of assent. I see, he replied. Hashirama asked, maybe it wouldn't bother you to take something to my longtime friend, since you are so tenacious. No, old-timer, Naruto said, grinning and saluting. Realizing he was adoring the child with the monkey tail, the first headmaster laughed. He said, cheeky brat. Vados said the elderly martial artist and healer, I know Master Roshi lives near Lako village, but I'm not exactly sure where, as he followed the first headmaster and fifth headmaster into their home. That's fine, my boy. He is rather hard to locate. He lives in a tiny house on an island amidst the ocean. As soon as you see it, you'll recognize it, the first headmaster stated, passing Vados a slim, wrapped gift and humorous notes. Vados informed the first headmaster, small house on an island, got it, after repeating to himself what he was ordered to search for several times. Simply tell Roshi that I sent you, the first headmaster told the golden monkey-tailed boy, knowing that this would increase the boy's chances of receiving instruction from his former competitor. Thank you, mister, Naruto responded, lowering his head in appreciation. First headmaster, he said, and the first headmaster returned the gesture. Everything is fine, son. I should better go, I'll be back later, replied Naruto, and he bid the girl farewell with his lungs opting. Goodbye, fifth headmaster, he said. As Naruto rose into the sky and then darted across the skyline like a shooting star, the fifth headmaster waved back. The youngster with the monkey tail then focused on the vast blue that surrounded the little tropical island, and Naruto quickly located Lako village, floating above the small island and grinning as he watched the residents going about their daily lives. When Naruto's kai touched Roshi's, a flare ignited in the monkey-tailed boy's mind that revealed the location of the old turtle hermit's home, and he quickly flew across the ocean, the waves parting before him. After following the kai he could now sense, Naruto finally reached a small island with a decently sized house and a few palm trees, and he folded his arms, closed his eyes, and extended his kai, using his energy to find Master Roshi in a manner similar to echolocation. As he landed gently on the sand below, Naruto thought, Kame House. This is surely the place. After enjoying the peace and quiet of the island for a little while, he approached the screen door, knocked 3 times, and yelled, Pardon me, I'm looking for Master Roshi. Hilo. An elderly voice said, Hold your horses, I'm coming. A man wearing a red and white t-shirt with quirky flower embroidery emerged through the screen door. Master Roshi was standing right in front of Naruto, his signature cane in one hand, his bald head shining in the sunlight. "Who could you be?" the martial artist asked, stroking his beard with his free hand. "I have some letters here for you from Mr. First Headmaster." Naruto introduced himself, adding, "I am son Naruto, and I have come looking for my father's master." He bowed before the elderly turtle hermit, putting a clenched hand on an open palm. With his signature glasses on the verge of falling off and his beard concealing his broad smile, Roshi cried out, "Wait, did you say your last name was Sun? Hahaha, do you resemble Monkey King, your former master?" "So, you're the Sun Monkey King's child. How your hair has changed, but how about your tail and smile? That extraordinary strength." After evaluating Naruto's traits and learning a little more about his strength, Master Roshi said, "You're definitely his son. Thank you for bringing his letters and the gift from his oldest friend, which he assumed included a new nasty magazine, Naruto," he said. There was a hint of conceit in Naruto's voice as he acknowledged his power. He confidently continued, "I'm not trying to brag, but since I am the strongest, it makes sense that my dad would be pretty strong too." "The strongest, you say?" Roshi said, massaging his beard. "That is a very bold claim, beginning to raise questions about Naruto's actual skills, and whether he was the hidden asset needed to handle the superpower threat." "It's the truth," Naruto reassured the martial arts specialist. The young monkey was anxious to comply with Master Roshi's request, but he was concerned about the aging master's ability to keep up. "Well, would it be okay if I tried testing your strength myself?" Concerned that it would hurt the older guys if he used his strength excessively, Naruto questioned, "Are you sure that you will be alright?" As Naruto left his house and made his way to the coast, Roshi smiled and waved off his worries, whispering, "I think I'll manage." "If you say so," Naruto murmured, watching the man in the turtle shell slowly walk to his place, giving Roshi a caustic look and letting a drop of perspiration fall down his cheek. "Alright, boyo, I'm ready. Bring it on," Roshi exclaimed as Naruto hurried in, his arm drew back and his fist ready for a powerful haymaker, which Naruto expected would be strong enough to send the old man flying without causing any serious harm. But the young man did not expect that Roshi would duck, his sandals grazing the sand, as he positioned himself with his back to the shock's superpower. With a slight smile beneath his beard, Roshi said, "Remember to be gentle with me. I'm old, after all." Though he wasn't necessarily faster than Naruto, the old master seemed to use every movement effectively, anticipating moves and avoiding dangers with basic instincts developed over years of experience and wisdom. But he was too busy underestimating Roshi to prepare for a small Kai blast directed at his face, which momentarily blinded the half-breed, and left him open to having his tail grabbed firmly. Naruto hurried back with a renewed sense of excitement, and threw a barrage of punches and kicks, which the martial artist skillfully sidestepped, while maintaining his hands behind his back. Immediately feeling dizzy, unsteady, and exhausted, Naruto wiped his face, glanced languidly over his shoulder, and then squinted as he became aware that Roshi was taking advantage of a weakness he was unaware of. Naruto barely had time to stammer, while before Roshi gave him a slap on the head, he laughed. Roshi laughed, released Naruto's tail, and watched the half-breed super shake his head, his power gradually returning, but his eyes showed a mixture of wonder and caution. "Got you, my boy," Roshi said. As the older master appeared to be deep in concentration, Naruto crossed his arms and approached Roshi, holding his tail tightly about his waist and grumbling, "Tch, sneaky old man." Naruto's remark, "Perhaps, but you are strong. Your strength truly outshines your father's at this age," snapped Roshi back to reality. "But you lack concentration, technique, and an effective way to harness your power." Just as Roshi had expected, the young man bowed deeply, his voice brimming with humility, and pleaded, "Please master, teach me. I want to become a better warrior and surpass my father." Although he was powerful, he was still very young, possibly too young to understand the wisdom of the old turtle hermit's words, and as a result, he might react violently. "I usually don't accept just anybody as my student, but since you are the son of my greatest pupil, and have earned the favor of one of my oldest friends, I will train you in the turtle hermit way," Roshi said proudly, astonished by the unexpected embrace. Thank you. Naruto insisted prior to the elderly master being free to start training. "Is it feasible to start training right away?" "Not today, my boy. Given your strength, I have to come up with some plans that are on par with your level, but we'll start right away tomorrow. Go home and rest. One of the rules of the turtle hermit way is to rest well afterward." Roshi shook his head and repositioned his sunglasses. He really is like you, Monkey King, he thought. In response to the old master's shout, "I'll see you tomorrow, master," Naruto saluted and rose slowly into the sky, stating, "Right, master." "See you tomorrow, my new student," Roshi thought to himself as he waved the airborne toddler away. "I should call Bulma and tell her about this new development. That boy will definitely help us defeat the superpowers," he added. Now that the long-haired stranger was awake, Naruto started straight toward the first headmaster's house, feeling a familiar weak surge of energy, as the superpower kid flew through the skies, almost beaming, making plans to go home. Nevertheless, the fifth headmaster tried to slam the frowning stranger's head in, but was only partially restrained by the first headmaster, who was laughing uneasily. Naruto, who knew the way to the mysterious intruder's temporary quarters, ran into the big house in his excitement, forgetting to be polite. "Settle down, fifth headmaster." There was no malice intended, the first headmaster said in an attempt to calm his irate grandkids, but like his cherished wife, may she rest in peace, she was unyielding and unyielding. The fifth headmaster growled and squinted her honey-brown eyes into slits full hurling daggers at the smirking older superpower. "This bastard called me ass-serving wench and ordered me to bring him food," she said. As he tried to stand up, the man with the long, spiky hair writhed and asked, "TCH, are you trying to injure a man when he's already hurt? Is there no honor in you, girl?" The fifth headmaster yelled, "I'll show you honor," when she was about to break free from her grandfather's tight hold. "I knew you were awake," yelled Naruto. Everyone in the room looked at the youthful, vivacious superpower. His tail was excitedly uncoiling from around his waist. You're the one who saved me," the wounded man said, his eyes drawn to the boy's golden monkey tail, which matched his own. "So, you really are a superpower?" he asked. "I don't know what a superpower is," Naruto humbly said, grinning and laughing as he scratched the back of his head. His father had the same look. The stranger snarled and said, "It's what you are, boy. Your heritage," as he shifted to a more comfortable position. "My nerve," Naruto said again, his expression bewildered. Nodding to the teenager with the superpower, the man remarked, "You don't have the typical look for a superpower, but given you're a half-breed, I'm not surprised." Naruto raised his eyebrow in interest and tilted his head, asking, "What are superpowers?" As he went on, the mysterious outsider explained in a more solemn tone. The superpowers were once a proud race of star-faring conquerors, the most powerful and vicious warriors to have ever inhabited the universe, with a grown kingdom that could only be compared to the Cold Empire. Or at least, that was our status. He could still recall where he was on the day it happened. A nameless planet with Prince Vegeta IV, the super elite Nappa, and two low-class super warriors like himself, though those two didn't last long. The sixth headmaster was interested, but she was tired of him, thinking he was just a troublemaker. "What happened to them?" Naruto inquired in an attempt to learn more about his people's fate. "At that time, my two companions and I were informed that our home, planet Vegeta, had been struck by an asteroid," Vados said solemnly to his fellow superpower. "This disaster destroyed our house and almost wiped out our entire race." He wondered if his parents were with him and what they might have been doing in their last moments. Did they look at him as death drew near? Did they consider Kakarot? "Then, if that is true, why did you arrive on this planet?" the fifth headmaster said, accusing the injured superpower while staring and crossing her arms. "To kill and destroy every single person here," she said. "You foolish girl, stop talking," the wounded warrior added. "I came here voluntarily, not in the name of conquering your pathetic planet," as he gazed at the fifth headmaster, even admiring her bravery. The long-haired super was drawn to Naruto once again when he asked, "What brought you to Earth?" "He was sent from our world before it exploded," the enigmatic super went on. "My mother sent his quadrants to my scouter through a secret message one I didn't realize until a year ago," Naruto said, trying not to interrupt the guy, remembering in a low voice that this was the name he had been whispering to himself. "Your brother couldn't have been pleased to see you, given how we discovered you, could he?" With his arms folded and his eyes fixated, the first headmaster asked. No, he wasn't," the enigmatic person said angrily when they locked eyes and held a tense silence. By the time Naruto asked, "Why superpower?" his comrade turned away, his eyes hazy from remembering the battle that almost killed him. He first reacted angrily to his response, expressing more emotion than his feelings, and the way he and his younger brother had split up. "It doesn't matter, he won, I lost." Curiosity taking over, Naruto inquired, "Did you guys fight?" "Das haben wir." "Why is that?" Despite the fact that the question was so straightforward, the enigmatic stranger felt a great deal of pressure to answer honestly. In the end, his voice was barely audible. "Weil sich weigert, mir zuhör, weil ich zu stolz war, zu erkennen, dass nicht die Superkraft war, die ich dachte, und weil ich schwach war," he said, tensing his eyes in his Faustbelt, as if he would harm him like a brooder in Kampfer, his own weakness. "I'm sorry you guys fought, but maybe you can apologize and make up, so you can be brothers again when you see each other again," Naruto said softly, his young face decorated with an optimistic and cheerful smile. The visitor remained with his back to Naruto, thinking about what the youngster had said, and wondering if he and Kakarot were really linked. Observing that the elder superpower was not in a conversational mood, the first headmaster began to lead his granddaughter and the superpower youngster out of the room, saying, "Come along, Naruto. He needs his rest." Naruto turned back over his shoulder one last time and added candidly, "Mister, I hope you feel better soon," with a last melancholy smile that the man could not see. His fellow superhero responded, "Raditz, my name is Raditz," before Naruto could leave the room completely. A long way from Senju's house. The fifth headmaster, who was still a little irritated by the superpower's crude remarks, raised an eyebrow at her fellow blonde and asked, "What's up?" with a happy attitude with his arms crossed behind his head and a bright smile on his face for the first and fifth headmasters to see. Naruto was in a positive mood. When Naruto responded bluntly, the older girl rolled her eyes and said, "I finally know his name." "It doesn't take much to make you happy, huh?" said the fifth headmaster, crossing her arms and smirking at the smiling young woman. Hey mister. First headmaster, would it be okay if I stayed overnight?" Naruto turned to face the elderly man. The first headmaster asked, "So as not to disturb the boy's family, I suppose that wouldn't be a problem, but wouldn't your family be worried?" "Yes, they're aware that I am capable of taking care of myself. In addition, I want to continue working with Raditz after receiving my training from Meister Roshi," said Naruto, returning the concern of the elderly men. With a nod of assent, the first headmaster said, "Well, you can stay if they don't mind. You can be shown to your room by the fifth headmaster." In order to show appreciation, Naruto said, "Thank you, Mr. First Headmaster. It is quite alright, my boy. Now, if you will excuse me, I must rest." Healing Raditz took a lot out of these old bones. The first headmaster excused himself as he left for bed. "I'll bring your supper soon, Grandpa," the fifth headmaster remarked to the first headmaster, smiling a little as the guy combed her hair. "Thank you very much, Tsuna." Naruto's quiet laugh made the fifth headmaster flush, and he whispered in embarrassment, "Grandpa." The two golden-haired children were sitting outdoors when the first headmaster walked inside his house. Naruto got up, put his palm on his stomach, and remarked, "I'm starting to get hungry. Fifth headmaster, would you like to accompany me hunting?" as he watched the sun gracefully set behind the twin mountains. In response, the girl with the ponytail shrugged and said, "I guess I can." "Did you want to make it a game?" asked Naruto, a little excited at the prospect of enjoying himself with a person his own age, something he had never done before. "A game?" inquired the fifth headmaster, raising an eyebrow. "Yeah, whoever hunts the biggest animal wins," Naruto said just because he found it funny. When the fifth headmaster said, "That sounds dumb," the Minky boy began to wriggle his tail and sulk, trying to think of a way to get the fifth headmaster to change his mind. As the plot took root, Naruto turned his head away to conceal his sly smirk from fifth headmaster. "Yeah, I get it. I mean, if I knew I was going to lose, I wouldn't want to play either," he remarked. Putting her hands on her hips, the fifth headmaster asked, "Who said I would lose?" She was not fond of the insinuation made by the boy with the monkey tail, as he teased her sense of self-worth. "What's your point, shorty?" she asked. Knowing full well that it would arouse her competitive nature, Naruto shrugged his shoulders and gave the older woman a smug smile. "If you want, we can spice things up," he added. That's what the fifth headmaster said. "You want to bet? Alright, that's sufficient. If I win, what do I get?" In the event of a defeat, she questioned what Naruto would supply, and whether he would honor his promise. "Why do wills, but if I win, I'll get a cool technique from you," said Naruto, and he didn't give the fifth Kopfmeister handschlag. He felt sure he was going to win this. Accepting the younger boy's proposal, the fifth headmaster shook Naruto's hand without hesitation and yelled, "Deal." The fifth headmaster imitated Naruto's racing stance as he grinned and leaped to stand behind the taller woman, shouting, "On the count of 3. 1. Observing the fifth headmaster's smile, the blonde super started the countdown. The countdown continued with the fifth headmaster saying, 2. She began to get excited for the first enjoyable moment she had experienced in a long time. When Naruto and the fifth headmaster both yelled, 3-3, the fifth headmaster gained an advantage when the superpower kid was gently pushed aside. Naruto yelled, "Hey. That's not fair." But he always kept grinning. He chased after the fifth headmaster until he was a mere whisker away from her, flashing a mischievous grin as he declared, "Prepare to lose to Tsuna." "You're done for her," the codename of the Junjin was used, and the 5 directors' wangs rolled their eyes at Zorn and Sham. Naruto broke away from the fifth headmaster and went out on his own to find and avoid the enraged girl. The remains of a Tyrannosaurus Rex were still somewhat fresh, with its blood pooling on the ground, and Naruto, crossing his arms and humming to himself, sniffed the air and said, "Whatever killed this mighty dinosaur was close and still hungry." He had spent years of practice tracking down a herd of deer, but Naruto felt they were not large enough, so he stopped searching after finding a piece of carcass. Naruto's ear twitched as he heard a deep rumbling growl from the darkness, and he squinted while extending his senses. The tiny superpower only waited for a moment before a blazing hot flame appeared from the shadows, lighting up the area enough for Naruto to see nothing but red scales, enormous yellow eyes, and serried rows of sharp teeth. At the sight of a burning death, a normal young person would be paralyzed by terror, but Naruto just smiled, his eyes glimmering with malice, as a dragon in all its splendor screamed down at him fiercely, spreading its enormous bat-like wings. Naruto jumped into the fire without a shred of fear of burning, and with his fists drawn back, he appeared near the dragon's snout, striking the drake so hard that its head snapped violently to the side, and though its wings tried to spread in defiance, they were slowly folding in as the great beast fell. Naruto patted the enormous dragon and silently thanked the once powerful drake for the meal it was about to offer. After closing his eyes and concentrating his kite to raise the beast above him, Naruto started to fly out of the ashy area, seeking the fifth headmaster. In addition to the fifth headmaster, despite not having Naruto's raw kai strength, the girl with the high ponytail had a respectable amount of power and the focus and self-discipline needed to use kai effectively, and she moved swiftly but silently as she pursued her own prey, the granddaughter of the legendary warrior and healer, first headmaster. The honey brown-eyed girl wound her way through the trees, pausing whenever she sensed a creature's kai waning. Curious, the fifth headmaster went to the scene of the commotion and was astounded to see a wounded doe barely able to stand on its injured leg, but it bravely defended its fawn from a hungry pack of wolves that was slowly closing in on the frightened pair. The fifth headmaster's extraordinary kai control allowed her to keep an almost perfect mental map of the area and even identifying Naruto from a great distance. Without a second's hesitation, the girl screamed and slammed her fist into the ground, shattering it into sharp pieces and sending the wolves running away in terror, tails between their legs. The fifth headmaster scowled and huffed as she brushed her hands and looked at the mother and child, but her face softened when she saw that the wounded creature was terrified of her. The fifth headmaster felt the maternal instinct and fear that drove the doe to defend her young, even at the expense of her own life. "It's okay," she whispered softly as she walked slowly forward with one hand up, hoping the doe would realize she was harmless and that her only goal was to assist. The fifth headmaster, after waiting a moment with her hand outstretched for the injured mother to smell, looked at her and slowly lay down, being careful not to disturb her injured leg. The fifth headmaster directed her kai into a traditional technique that had been passed down through the generations in her family and that she had learned from her grandfather. The fawn huddled up against its mother, mimicking her movements, and then rubbing its head against the girl's hand. The doe's wound healed so quickly that it appeared to have never been there in the first place in a matter of seconds. The doe thanked the fifth headmaster by nuzzling her cheek, then stumbled to her feet, quickly regained her balance, and left with her fawn. While some could argue that it was of no importance and that all she had done was to postpone the wolves until another day, the fifth headmaster saw it differently. It was far more personal to him. She watched him go with a sad smile, happy that she had saved a life. As she pushed away her gloomy thoughts, the fifth headmaster went on her mission, unaware that Naruto was grinning in the skies with a slain dragon, and the superpowered boy went back to the house, leaving the girl to hunt at her own pace. The fifth headmaster walked through the forest for a while, until he came to a place with tall trees and a threatening atmosphere, and as she entered the clearing, she pretended not to notice the enormous snake watching her from a nearby tree, and the blonde girl with the ponytail grinned as the snake jumped at her, its jaws wide open, intending to devour her whole in a single bite. The enormous snake was unaware of the fifth headmaster's sudden appearance, and she appeared above it with her foot up, then landed hard, slamming its head in a single blow. The fifth headmaster, smiling with admiration at her kill, lifted the titanic boa over her head and flew home. The two sat side by side as the meat cooked on a spike, and afterwards, over a blazing fire, the fifth headmaster was grumbling that Naruto's dragon was bigger than her snake, and she reluctantly conceded that she had lost the bet. The fifth headmaster looked at the little boy and raised an eyebrow when she saw that he had his eyes closed, and appeared to be fixated on his kai in an unexplainable way. "What are you doing?" she said curiously. Naruto opened one eye and murmured, "I'm working on a technique I made myself," his customary roguishness and generosity giving place to a kind yet serious smile. "That's quite incredible. Not many people, especially at your age, are able to create their own methods." "What kind of method is it?" The fifth headmaster made a comment, clearly impressed and appreciating the superpower's well-earned praise. Naruto held out a hand for the fifth headmaster to put her own against and said, "Give me your hand and I'll show you." The girl obeyed the superpower boy's command, but she scowled at him. The fifth headmaster tried pressing her palm against Naruto's, but was unsuccessful. She scowled thoughtfully and tried pushing harder, but the effect remained the same. Even using kai seemed futile, as her hand remained in the same spot, as if she would never touch Naruto's hand, no matter how hard she tried. Still attempting to understand Naruto's specific method, the older woman said, "Is it some kind of barrier?" Naruto smiled, pleased by the catchy moniker, and remarked, "It's a really special move that I've been working on for a long time. I'm calling it Limitless." The fifth headmaster, still attempting to master the invisible force that separated their hands, asked, "So how does it work?" Naruto sighed and scratched the back of his head with his other hand. "Well, it's a little difficult to explain, but I guess the best way to put it is that it's basically infinite," he said. "Huh?" asked the fifth headmaster, tilting her head slightly. "Es sei denn, ich mach nicht, dass es so ist," remarked Naruto, referring to the fifth meister as he lowered his technique and brushed her hands together. "I'm not stopping you. I'm just slowing your hand so much that it looks like it doesn't move. But the gap between us will always be infinite, and you will never be able to reach me." As she rolled her eyes at the younger child's happy expression, the fifth headmaster praised him, saying, I thought you were just a simple monkey boy. I didn't expect you to be so creative." "How did you think of that kind of thing?" Still captivated, the fifth headmaster asked. "It came to me in a dream," Naruto stated with a shrug and no additional explanation. Ein Traum was. The fifth headmaster rolled her eyes in response, but she nevertheless took the answer. That particular incident, according to her imagination, reminded her of their wager and her loss. A deal is a deal, declared the fifth headmaster. What do you want me to teach you? I'll teach you something I know, but I doubt it's as impressive as that limitless technique, she said to the superpower. I want to be able to heal people and myself like you do, Naruto said sincerely, requesting that the elder woman teach him the art of healing. Show me how you accomplished that awesome healing thing. Hang on there, that's an essential and time-honored healing method of the Senju clan. I can't just show you how to do it, explained the fifth headmaster, blushing slightly. She recalled that marrying into her family was the only other option for someone to learn from them. She viewed this as an outdated and stupid ritual, and she thought about it with shame. Please, fifth headmaster sensei. Naruto begged with his monkey tail gliding softly from side to side and his hands folded over his head. She sighed and mumbled, "Tch, I can't believe I'm doing this," as she dragged a hand down her face. The fifth headmaster turned to face the monkey boy, prodded his chest, and said, "You need to pay attention to everything I say, and can't let up if I'm going to teach you. Healing isn't as destructive or wild as other moves, but it's just as important. Got that?" "Yes, ma'am," Naruto said, straightening up and saluting to the delight of the older girl. As the fifth headmaster sliced pig pieces and placed them on a dish with rice and vegetables, he added, "Good, I'll bring Grandpa something to eat. I won't be long." Naruto returned to his roasted dragon limb after saying, "Okay, see you soon," and raising his head momentarily to say, "I can sense you, you know." The older superpower sat down next to the younger boy, stunned and blinking when the youngster showed him the other dragon limb. It was then that Raditz realized he hadn't eaten in days, and he appeared, his torso wrapped in new bandages. Raditz nodded his agreement and took the food that was served, and he and his fellow superpower ate in silence, or rather, a momentary silence, as Naruto spoke, "I'm glad to see you're feeling better." I asked Raditz, "You were after biting into the leg of the dragon?" "Yeah, now I'll be able to learn more about you and the superpowers," Naruto said with a smile, his tail swaying calmly. "You wouldn't be helping me if you knew who I was or what I've done," Raditz muttered, his expression concerned as he gazed into the flames, his chest aching from guilt more than his wound. Naruto remained mute as he observed Raditz, curious about the cause of the damage being done to his fellow super. Raditz nodded knowingly as he thought about his brother. "Your friendliness is at a loss here. Tch, which should never be possible for a superpower, but for which reason also goes deep for you and Kakarot." Naruto put down his food and focused entirely on the elder superpower, asking, "Who's Kakarot? Is it your brother?" "Kakarot is my brother and your father," Raditz said, seeing his nephew's reaction to the information. With his arms folded and his brows furrowed in perplexity, Naruto firmly stated, "My father's name is Sun Monkey King." He hissed, "That is his name as an earthling. His true name is Kakarot, son of Bardock and Jine." When Naruto recognized the man sitting next to him, he thought, "Wait, does that mean?" "That's correct, I'm your uncle," said Raditz, and turned back to the fire. Before remembering what the elder super had told him earlier that day, Naruto said, "So that brother you were fighting, that was my dad. I've never had an uncle before." "Is war? But why wouldn't I help you? Was it only because you had a dispute with your brother? Don't siblings who are brothers argue?" asked Naruto, confused by what his uncle may have done to make him dislike him. "Because your father died trying to kill me with that Namekian." Raditz yelled at his nephew as he got to his feet. "Do you understand now, child? Your father's death is my fault." The guilt was nearly too much for him to handle. In a sense, Raditz was expressing his sentiments of embarrassment and rage about his shortcomings as an elder brother and son, by yelling angrily at the young child, "What, nothing to say? Are you not outraged about my actions? Are you not interested in me paying?" Instead of losing his temper or attacking the older superpower, Naruto expressed his sorrow over the conflict between his father and Raditz, lamenting that he had failed to see it sooner and act to stop it. "Du vollstich schlecht wegen des Geschehenen, du wolltest meinem Vader nicht wetten, das Spürich," Naruto said. "What would a brat like you know?" Raditz muttered before leaving Naruto to sit by himself as he returned to the Senju residence to rest and consider what his nephew had said. "Is everything okay with you?" the fifth headmaster asked, taking advantage of the lone superpower's stillness to make her presence known. With sadness, Naruto remarked, In reference to his uncle, he said, "Yeah, I'm fine, but I don't think he is." "Hey, are you still interested in learning from me?" the fifth headmaster, who was obviously not pleased with the dejected expression on the normally happy monkey boy's face, asked. Naruto yelled, "Yes. What should I do first?" His emotions surged. "Alright, well, first things first, control and mastery of your Kai," the fifth headmaster stated, and she laughed softly. For the rest of the evening, fifth headmaster spent her time teaching Naruto the fundamentals. She eagerly absorbed the lessons because she was so enthralled with them. As the morning broke, Naruto bid Raditz and the Senjus farewell and promised to return. Naruto was flying home to Jingle Village with a silver ore, intending to visit his mother and get something wonderful. Came house. Master Rashi, a martial artist, was sitting on the beach that encircled his home one beautiful evening. He was lying with his oldest pet and friend, a marine turtle, beneath a lone palm tree. The two of them were happy as the sun shone on the placid water surface until one of Capsule Corporation's smaller planes touched down on his island, and they heard the sound of an engine. Rashi invited the woman into his home, and they sat at the table while he gave her tea. He said, Bulma, Sean, das du es geschafft hast. Bulma scowled as Rashi shook his head and posed the wild assumption, so, what is it? Were Krillin and the others suddenly extraordinarily powerful, or what? No, that isn't the case. The elderly master responded honorably, even though they are training hard, I don't think it will be enough to defeat the superpowers. Then, precisely what is it? Bulma inquired, growing a little agitated as she tried to make sense of what was going on. Rashi was interrupted by a youthful voice outside, shouting, his name is Meister, I've returned. Ah, speak of the little devil and he shall appear. Come on, let's go greet him. Rashi remarked, gesturing Bulma to follow him, while laughing and stroking his beard with pleasure. Tell me he isn't. Bulma said, glancing at the master, who was grinning cheekily confidently. The heir to Capsule Corporation had expected many things, but not a youngster with blonde hair, a brilliant familiar smile, and a monkey tail. It looks like our boy, the Monkey King, has been very busy. Hahaha. Wearing an orange guy over his mother-made yellow long-sleeve shirt, Naruto walked up to the stunned Bulma, his boots leaving imprints in the sand as he extended his hand, unintentionally greeting one of his father's longtime friends. Son Naruto, it's a pleasure to meet you, Naruto said, his pants, made for martial artists and matching the color of his guy, held in place by a turquoise sash. The name Naruto caused Bulma's short-circuiting brain to reboot, and the purple-haired woman shook her head to get the shock out of her body, and answered Naruto with an odd likewise. So, master, what are we doing today? Rashi exclaimed, my boy, you like this. The boy's excitement was contagious because he hadn't had a student to instruct in a long time. I'll teach you a move that your dad learned from me, he said. Really? Rashi yelled aloud, ha. As a blue ball of Kai formed between his palms and thrust his hands forward, unleashing a flawless Kai wave that cleaved the ocean. Rashi, moving to the shore of his island and plunging his brown cane into the sand, said, that's correct. He cupped his hands and proceeded to gently chant the name of his most potent technique, today is the day I teach you the Kamehameha. Turning to face his new pupil, Rashi said, not bad, despite his beard, he smiled as he pulled back the force of his technique, and allowed the sea to calm. In a whisper, Naruto said, that was fantastic with bright eyes. The young superhero nodded as he absorbed his master's advice. Now it's your turn. I want you to do what I did. Just follow my movements and believe in yourself, Naruto stated, holding Rashi's hands at waist level. Do you think he can manage it on his first attempt? Bulma questioned, a little homesick at the sight of Naruto. With complete faith in Naruto's skills, Rashi nodded and remarked, if this boy resembles his father at all, then I know he will. Ka. While he bundled with his hands, Naruto closed his eyes and immediately in and out. Me? Rashi watched with anticipation as the energy that Naruto had accumulated began to turn the island azure. Bulma, a regular human without access to Kai, was stunned and gaped in wonder as the superpowered child resumed his scream of, ha, as sand and water whirled about him in a ferocious dance. Me? For a brief moment, Rashi's elderly eyes appeared as if the ghost of the Afenkinix had been next to Naruto, his hands placed beside his son to assist him, his energy bundling. Rashi blinked, realizing that what he had thought was the Monkey King's spirit was no longer there, only his son the world's hope until the Monkey King returned. When Naruto slammed his eyes open, they enlarged in a blue, blurry, and fierce way. Hey. The exceptional teenager yelled, releasing his Kai wave with a hand thrust. Poor Bulma gaped, unable to understand what the smiling child was doing, and even if his father had been able to do the same things when she was younger, it would still be a mystery to her every time. The sea was unable to withstand the power of Naruto's Kai wave, and the waves broke with a force that was almost biblical in size. How much more will you grow, Naruto? Rashi thought to himself as he approached the young super to congratulate him and start their training for the day. The young man took advantage of every opportunity to talk to Bulma during his training breaks, asking her all sorts of questions about his father, and hearing her amazing tales of their adventures together. When he learned of a scheme to use the Dragon Balls, a magical set of 7 star orbs that could call forth a powerful dragon and grant one wish to bring his father back to life, Naruto took advantage of the chance to wish for Sun Monkey King to return when the time was right. At this time, preparing for the impending threat of superpowers was the only thing left to do. Naruto had almost mastered all forms of combat, and the self-control required to wield them effectively was steadily increasing in the hyperactive boy. He was a natural prodigy when it came to martial arts, and the Kame style seemed appropriate since it was the same form his father practiced. It had been 6 months since Naruto found his uncle Raditz and began training with his new master, Rashi. It was surprising how effective meditation turned out to be. The young superpower man once again amazed the old master by adapting to his teachings. The boy seemed to have a natural talent for meditation. War sane lassage, swordless art, dies for Naruto so like-matched. Or was it his ancestry of superpowers? Could it be his humanity? Rashi didn't understand, but he was certain that Naruto would continue to evolve and surpass all expectations. It seems the next generation has great talent, Rashi said to himself, grinning. He then beckoned Naruto over and shouted, lunch. The sight of a man-sized grilled fish, a fried octopus, a massive sushi platter, and enough rice to serve 12 people, made Naruto's stomach growl with excitement. The monkey-tailed boy sat at the table, wiped the drool from his lips, and said, I did Akamasa wearing his trusty orange and yellow guy. He clapped his hands together. Warren Naruto, hungry as a wolf, his food with the giant Hinunterschlang and Unjahuers, and only for drinking from a strohum, Rashi from his teller in a distinctly civilized time, and shook his head. Naruto grinned at his instructor and exclaimed, this is excellent with a sigh of satisfaction. He wiped his lips with the back of his arm and said, thank you, Master Rashi. It's no problem my boy, we need to get you as strong as possible, Rashi said, which made Naruto think about the impending danger and their potential strength. Hey master, the superpowers are going to be super tough, right? Naruto asked, pausing his breakfast to concentrate on his teacher. That is why all of my students, your father's friends, are working as hard as they can, Rashi whispered, caressing his beard. Even though we are more numerous, if Piccolo's assertions are accurate, the superpowers are unlike anything we have ever seen. Die Personen, die Warhaben, Reichenauch Nikdos. Naruto lied, supported his kin on the hand, and ransled the stern thereafter. Rashi took a sip of his drink and remarked absently, don't worry, my boy, we've got you and your brother. He didn't completely understand what the old master had said until he glanced at Naruto and watched the superpower's jaw drop in response to his bombshell. Naruto yelled, got to his feet, and slapped his palms on the table. Is my brother here? Did I forget to mention that? Rashi said, stroking his bald head in shame. Naruto's heart began to accelerate when he learned that he had a brother, an actual sibling. Where is he? How does he look? That's what he's always wanted. Rashi's remark, you could say you both look very similar, except he has your father's dark hair, and he has a tail like you, disturbed Naruto as he was attempting to visualize his brother's appearance. Ich glob, or trainier Jared mit Piccolo, Rashi said. Piccolo, Naruto asked his teacher, putting aside his plans to look for his brother for the moment. Teacher, do you know if there is a technique to heal someone incredibly fast? He had been thinking about the question for months. Why do you ask, my boy? Asked Vados, since he couldn't disclose that it was for his uncle, the same man who had killed his father. He wasn't entirely honest. Just in case we need it for the upcoming battle, Rashi hummed, considering what Naruto had said. Well, there are the senzu beans. Just one will restore you to full strength and heal any wound as if it never existed. The elderly turtle hermit informed his student, figuring it wouldn't hurt to introduce him to Korin, so he could meet the elderly cat. Maybe you should check out Kami's lookout while you're at it. You're definitely more than ready, he said. Then I'll go there immediately, Naruto stated after standing up and doing some simple stretches to help him digest his lunch. Master, where do I have to go? Trying to be as clear as possible, Rashi said to his pupil, there stands a magnificent tower that touches the sky. You can't miss it, to the sacred lands of Korin, a rich forest west of the desert. After shouting, all right, I'll be right over, and, launching himself into the air in a silver flash, Naruto returned to Rashi's house moments later, sheepishly grinning as the superpowered youngster asked, master, which way is west? That way, my boy, Rashi said with a laugh before indicating the west. Ich bin unterwegs. Naruto yelled once more as he flew westward after leaving Kame's house in the hopes of getting his uncle Raditz a senzu bean, in the hopes that he would be able to assist when the superpowers arrived, because he needed to be able to fight as soon as possible, and the senzu beans seemed to be the only way to do that. Raditz was recuperating quickly. The superpowered boy promised himself that he would find his brother after he had fully healed his uncle. As he flew through the clear blue sky, Naruto began to think about his brother once more, wondering what he looked and sounded like, and whether he was as impulsive and playful as Naruto himself, or gentle and kind. On a little planet in a region beyond Earth, often called the skies, surrounded by an endless mass of yellow clouds, Sun Monkey King, Naruto and Gohan's father, was diligently practicing under the guidance of his new master, King Kai. As he sat on the soft grass, Superpower sighed and looked up at the yellow clouds thoughtfully, breathing deeply as his body adjusted to the gravity of King Kai's planet, thanking the Monkey Bubbles and wiping his face with a towel. In his troubled state, the Monkey King ran along the long and expansive Snake Way, hoping to train with King Kai, but only after reaching the deity's planet and becoming his disciple did he learn of Raditz's survival through his son, a child the Monkey King was unaware of, and with King Kai's assistance, he was able to see what his son looked like and learn his name just by looking at him. After 6 months of worry, the Monkey King finally arrived at King Yama's desk and learned that his brother was not dead, but had suffered severe injuries and would require help to recover. Bardock's younger son had kept the news of Raditz' continued existence a secret because he feared that his older brother was doomed to evil, like the superpowers coming to Earth. But it appeared that Naruto was slowly piercing Raditz's self-imposed shield, and he might be able to save his brother in a way the Monkey King could not. Naruto shocked the mightiest fighter on Earth, especially because his son saw a light in Raditz that the Monkey King had missed. It was because Naruto was his son that he trusted him, even if he didn't know him as well as he did Gohan. As he sipped his tea and listened to his Monkey Bubbles crew, King Kai said, "You're doing well, Monkey King. I have no doubt you'll master the Kakin in no time." Thanks to you, King Kai, I can already tell that my strength is greater than it was when I was on Earth," the Monkey King said, grinning and making jokes at the big man with the blue skin. As he observed the Monkey King's strength increase, King Kai gave a sage nod. "Yes, you have come a long way, and you may end up being my most gifted pupil," he said. Unaccustomed to witnessing the superpowers so engrossed in meditation, the Kai arched an eyebrow at his pupil and inquired, "Are you thinking about your son?" "I can't believe I didn't know he was out there," the Monkey King muttered. "How come Suno didn't tell me?" He put his cheek on his hand and moaned. "The Kansei, perhaps she had her reasons, perhaps she didn't wish to disrupt your life," said King Kai sagely, realizing that only Suno could fully understand her reasons. As he opened his eyes, jumped to his feet, and gripped his head in panic, the Monkey King muttered, "Maybe, but I'm sure Kai would have understood. How will I explain this to her?" As King Kai correctly concluded, "Haha. My student, I do not benefit you. What I've heard is that your wife can be very frightful." He didn't realize how amazing the Afenkanik's wife might be in her wrath. "You have no idea," the Monkey King remarked, scratching the back of his head as he considered his wife, sons, and friends, all of whom were undoubtedly working hard as well as the superpowers, which were just 6 months away. "Simply continue to put in hard work, all of you. I'm looking forward to meeting you, Naruto, and my return home will be soon." The Monkey King's son traveled across the vast desert with his hand placed above his eyes in a squint, while Naruto spent a full hour looking for the forest that held the tall tower his master had instructed him to locate. At this height, the heat of the desert did not completely impact him, but it gradually started to cause the superpower youth to perspire. Naruto silently grumbled to himself at the heat as he looked around. In the midst of the vast forests, he quickly saw what he thought was Korin's tower. He landed in a clearing, admiring the tall white pillar while whistling and grinning. Then he noticed a huge hut with a raging fire close by. A young man with dark skin and bright eyes emerged from the cabin. He was obviously a native of these regions because of his long black hair, which was braided with a red and white feather in the back. When he was called, a larger and more menacing-looking man entered the field of vision, which the Naruto could only conclude was the father of the older animals. "Who is it?" "Hey, I'm Son Naruto, and I'm excited to get to know you," the superpower boy said to the father Son Jaspan. The father carefully approached the monkey-tailed child and said, "Are you by any chance related to Sun Monkey King?" Naruto couldn't resist a cheeky smile as he scratched the back of his head. "He is actually my father," he said. The freshly christened boar said, "Ahaha, I should have known," with that smile and tail, as he held up his child. "I'm Boar, and this is my kid Yupa. It's nice to meet you. We are your father's friends." His son imitated him by approaching Naruto to shake hands. Naruto said, "I was surprised to learn that my dad had this many friends." Boar and Yupa smiled warmly as they remembered the spiky-haired young man who valiantly fought against the Red Ribbon Army and assisted Yupa in reviving his father. "Your dad is a remarkable individual with a kind heart. It's impossible not to want to be his friend," they added. "I'm beginning to realize that," Naruto replied quietly, gazing up at the sky with a wonderful, sincere grin. Yupa asked, "What brings you out here?" In an attempt to help Naruto. Instructing the father and son with his thumb, Naruto said, "My master sent me to Korin's tower, and then to Kami's lookout." "Well, you're definitely in the right place. All you have to do is travel up that pillar, and you'll find Korin," the native man stated, and Naruto exhaled in relief. "Awesome, I thought I was in the right place. Sorry, I have to go. I'm kind of in a hurry." "It was really nice meeting you both," Naruto stated as he began to make his way to the white stone building that was connected to Korin's tower. Boar murmured, "Good luck, Naruto," as the child superhero began to float and then propel himself with a wave of his own. Boar and Pew were reduced to insignificant spots on the ground in a matter of minutes, and Naruto was still a long way from Korin's tower. It took him 5 more minutes to reach the oval dome that was Korin's tower, after he had passed through the clouds. Humming as he explored his surroundings, Naruto slid gently to the ground. With one arm behind his back and the other clutching a stick that was a makeshift cane, he noticed a big, fluffy cat standing on its hind legs. Naruto walked over and touched the fluffy white cat without hesitation, assuming it was asleep. "Hey!" he cried, and was rewarded for his trouble with a slap on the head. When the superpower youngster caressed the cat, who was obviously Korin, the cat became embarrassed and yelled, "What the heck is wrong with you? You can't go around petting people." "I didn't know you could talk," was the reply, and Naruto rubbed his head. Korin sighed in frustration and replied, "Next time, try asking." Naruto admitted, "You're right, I apologize," and seemed ashamed of his error. Since Korin was unable to come, he was reminded by someone who said, Mokder kind Sorgen, Kleiner. How can I help you, then? Masarashi sent me here because I was curious about senzu beans, Naruto said, hoping the old cat would give him one nonetheless. I see, Korin said, guiding Vito to a large pot and opening the cover to find it filled with green beans. Senzu beans are of interest to you, aren't you?